How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here, back for another episode of our Pitt Panthers Dynasty here. Season 2, 2017. Ignore it says 2014 on the screen. But 2017 on the schedule. Huge season for us, and this is going to be our NCAA preview episode. Of course, we did our team preview episode. We're going to, because we like to do a weekly predictor series, previewing each game individually for the Panthers. So we'll maybe throw that at the end of the episode here, just so we can get into the season. Additionally, you'll notice we're in a bye week for week 1, just the way that I could get the schedule worked out to play the teams that I wanted us to play. So we will be off week 1, which means we'll do an NCAA preview. We usually do a preview of the big games going to take place in the week that we're in. We're also going to do week 2 at the same time here, look at the big games for week 2, just because of the fact that we don't play till week 2, and I don't want to have to do 2 preview episodes before we get to that point. So that's the housekeeping before we get this episode underway. But we're going to take a look around the nation. Who are the Heisman favorites? Who's the top 25? Things like that to start off this episode here. So if we come over and take a look, the top stories, of course, we can see Oklahoma's number 3. Big game here in week 1. We got Clemson versus Georgia. Going to be an absolute massive matchup. Of course, Clemson won the national championship last season. Texas, number 7. I think they were 8-3 or something of that nature, 9-3 last year. So that'll be a big game for them. LSU's looking number 6. It says Leonard Fournette, which means he didn't go to the NFL draft. Deshaun Watson's back with Clemson. So, a number of notable players who didn't go to the draft that we'll be watching out for this year. Another big game, you can see West Virginia, Alabama is the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. So that's going to be absolutely huge, which means let's take a look at who the top teams coming into this season are. Number 1, of course, is Clemson, last year's national championships, but they have a huge test taking on number 5 Georgia to start things off. Bama at number 2, Oklahoma and Ohio State number 3 and 4. Georgia's 5, LSU 6, Texas 7, Florida State, Miami 9, and Pitt 10, which means we can see 4 ACC teams, 3 SEC teams, 2 teams from the Big 12, and then from the Big 10, Ohio State rounding out our top 10. Your Pitt Panthers 10, Michigan 11, Texas A&M 12, Penn State number 13. Of course, they're notable because the Panthers will be taking them on in our second game of the season. Wisconsin 14, UCLA 15, TCU 16, Baylor, Louisville, Tennessee, Washington, Houston, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Florida, and Mississippi State round out your top 25. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit because I want to see where Oklahoma State is, only because of the fact that we do play them this year as well. Of course, we know how solid they are. Unbelievable offense in real life. We see their number 46 coming into the season, though they have a very good overall ranking, so that's who we'll be taking on. So there's kind of a quick glance, and I'm just going to fast. If you really want to pause it, if you have a favorite school and you want to see where they're at, you can always pause it. But there's a look just through all the teams making up the entirety, and UL Monroe bringing up the rear in the preseason top 25. Conference outlook, of course, for specifically the Panthers. Who can lead us to the ACC title if possible? Where are they predicting us? Second in the Coastal behind Miami. And if you take a look at our schedule, we can see that Miami is our last game of the season at home, so that could be the game that decides who wins the ACC Coastal Division if things shake out the way they're projected. North Carolina projected 3rd in the division, Virginia Tech 4th, Georgia Tech 5th, Virginia 6th, and Duke 7th. And, of course, big thing to know about Miami, I don't believe Brad Kaya has left, so I think he's still here this season. North Carolina, Trubisky has left, I believe. Gerard Evans is still at Virginia Tech. So a lot of players that aren't at their teams in real life are still here currently. Clemson, you can see Deshaun Watson is still there. So definitely some big-name players to watch out for. In the Atlantic, of course, Clemson, the favorites. Florida State, number 2. Lamar Jackson and Louisville projected 3rd in the Atlantic. Syracuse actually projected 4th. Boston College 5th. Wake Forest 6th. And NC State 7th in the ACC Atlantic. So that's the way things are projected here in our conference. We'll look at just the major conferences here as well. ACC, obviously, Clemson's projected to win the conference yet again. Big 12, Oklahoma's projected to win the conference. Big 10, Ohio State projected to win the conference. So they'll definitely have big fights from 2 other big dogs in their division. If we come down to the Pac-12, UCLA projected to win the Pac-12. And then, of course, in the SEC, Alabama projected to win the SEC. So those are your big conferences to take a look at. Heisman-wise, big early candidate, obviously, J.T. Barrett, who I believe won last year, if I remember correctly. J.T. Barrett won the Heisman last year with Deshaun Watson as runner-up. So he's looking to repeat there. Leonard Fournette, of course, another favorite. Michael Weber, running back from Ohio State, and Myles Gaskin, running back from Washington, are the 5 favorites heading into this season, though we know of so many big players that could have great seasons. Of course, Saquon Barkley for Penn State, Mason Rudolph for Oklahoma State, 2 guys, Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma. So a lot of players that could have, their way in the Heisman conversation depending on how the season goes. Preseason All-Americans, we're just going to look. You can take a look at the preseason ones. Jester Weah, preseason All-American for the Panthers here, wide receiver, so that would be fantastic. Depends on our quarterback play for sure. Rory Blair, unfortunately, preseason All-American, but he won't be playing this year because he was dismissed from the team, so we've dropped him from the depth chart, so unfortunately we won't see Rory have a chance. And Avonte Maddox, preseason All-American, he did have, I think, 6 interceptions last season, but he was not great in pass coverage, so that remains to be seen if he can fulfill that. You see Jabril Peppers still at Michigan, hasn't left, so 99 overall player there that could be fantastic. And Quadri Henderson, preseason All-American returner. He was an All-American last year as a return man for us, so hopefully we can see that again. Do we have anyone on the second team? Christian McCaffrey, you can see, is still here. So a lot of players that went to the draft still here in this particular season. Jordan Whitehead, second team preseason All-American. He will miss the first 3 games, though, so that's huge loss for us, of course. ACC, let's see who we got. Jester Weah, Alex Officer, preseason first team All-ACC player. DeMar Hamlin, Jordan Whitehead, Alex Buxer at right guard. Who else do we got? And I think that's it as far as second team All-Americans in the ACC or All-ACC projected players. So that's what we're looking at as far as your Panthers and just overall NCAA guys to watch for. Of course, the ACC, you can see it says, has the highest number of contenders. Toughest places to play. Heinz Field is kind of rigged on this one because of the fact that, wow, 7-0. We were undefeated at home last year, 7-0. And so because of that, we are getting stupendous attendance. I mean, when you come in as the number 10 team in the country, you're going to get fantastic attendance, which is always a contentious point for Pitt. Not having an on-campus stadium, attendance is always something that, people like to bring to the forefront of their attention. But if you can see, if the Panthers play well, if the team is number 10 in the country, you're going to get the fans out to the football field. And that's the way it is right now. We're 7-0 last year at home, of course, being the statement wins being that we beat Clemson and Penn State both at home last year. We do go away to Penn State to Beaver Stadium, and we do go away to Clemson Memorial Stadium, Death Valley, this year. So we'll see what we can do there. But we were 7-0 at home last year, so we're number 9 on this rank of toughest places to play, which would be unbelievable if Pitt could do that in real life. But that's where we're at right now. Number 1 toughest place to play is Ohio State, Ohio Stadium, Alabama, Texas, LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida State, Clemson. I mean, the usual suspects. Michigan Stadium, number 10. Beaver Stadium, where we do have to go this year, is number 11. See, they're on a 2-game win streak at home at Beaver Stadium. So that's going to be an unbelievable matchup, a real test of our team. As you can see, Penn State, 99 offense, 90 defense, 95 overall. We're only 91 overall, and our defense is only 88. So that's really going to be the test for us when we go take on the Nittany Lions in a huge rivalry matchup. Moving on from toughest place to play, we'll take a look at the championship contenders before we get into the big games this week. So just basically, what does it project for the next 4 years? How are we looking? So you can see this year right now is really our best outlook. We're definitely going to lose some key contributors this season, they're projecting, because right now, based on our recruiting and things of that nature, we're projected to be the 10th best team in the country this year, 18th next year, 22nd the year after that, and 21st. So a little bit of a drop down, but still very, very solid projection for us. You can see, we'll take a look at our local rival, Penn State, 13th this year, 20th next year, 18th, 26th. So they're hovering around the same kind of general area as us. Let's take a look at who the top 10 projected every year is. Obviously, Clemson, Bama, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Florida State, Miami, and then Pitt is your top 10 this year. Top 10 next year, Texas projected number 1, Bama 2, Notre Dame 3, so they're projected to come, I assume, based on their recruiting. Florida State 4. I think Notre Dame was 6-6 in this last year, so good to see they stunk. Tennessee 5, which is a huge uptick for next year for them, so definitely some young guys coming into the fold. LSU 6 again, Clemson 7, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Stanford with a couple big leaps. So the couple biggest movers would be Tennessee, Notre Dame, and Stanford. 2016, obviously, that's 3 years in advance, so who knows what could happen. But Florida State, LSU, Texas, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Bama, Miami, big mover there. UCLA, Ole Miss, which is a huge projection, and Oklahoma. And then, of course, 2017, Clemson, Texas, Florida State, Michigan, USC, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Oregon, Bama, and Nebraska. So definitely some big movers. The projections as the season moves on is going to be a big thing to see. But that's what we're projecting, what we're looking at coming into this season. Of course, we'll take a look, scores and schedules for week 1. What are the big games on the docket? Of course, you can see Texas taking on North Texas, Penn State taking on Temple, Houston, UTSA, Idaho, Florida, UCLA, Virginia, SMU, Baylor, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, a nationally broadcast game. Herb Street's picking Notre Dame. I'm rooting for Virginia Tech just because of the fact that it's Notre Dame, but you can see that's a big matchup on the schedule of both teams. And look, Virginia Tech, very daunting schedule this year. It looks like they have Ohio State this season as well, but with nothing really to go on, Notre Dame is the favorite in that matchup. You got West Virginia, Alabama, of course, Bama the favorite, no doubt about that in that regard. And of course, Chick-fil-A game, it's in Atlanta, so more of a home field advantage for Bama as they'd be the closest to Georgia there. Wisconsin, Washington State, Nebraska, Kansas State, Tennessee in the Texas Classic. I assume Tennessee's favored by Herb Street there. Clemson, Georgia, though, your game of the week at Georgia, so it'll be tough for Clemson going on the road here. And both teams looking stupendous, but Clemson the favorite, and Herb Street's going with them. Oklahoma State, Florida State, another huge game there in the Cowboys Classic. So if Oklahoma State can come out with a victory there, I think they would, they're 46th right now based on those preseason polls we saw, but they would shoot up in the rankings if they can get a win over Florida State. Washington against Hawaii, another big game there. So, a couple of big games we took a look at. Let's see what's going on week 2 in the top 25. Of course, your Pitt Panthers will be taking on Rice. We'll discuss that in a second. Penn State with Akron. Contentious remarks if you've been seeing James Franklin talking about how they view Pitt versus how they view Akron in the same light, which is interesting to see. Mississippi State, Vandy, Notre Dame, Syracuse at a neutral site game, I assume taking place in MetLife Stadium. Syracuse usually has that to start off the season. UCLA, Washington is going to be a huge Pac-12 battle. Honestly, the winner of that game could win their division. I would anticipate, Washington at home. I could see them coming out with a victory, though it's a toss-up there. Cincinnati, Ohio State, Louisville, Marshall. Let's see if there's any big games. Tennessee, Oklahoma, of course, a massive game. I would favor Oklahoma in that one just because of the fact that they are at home with a fantastic offense. Bama, Florida Atlantic, Nebraska, Fresno, Michigan, Utah, Houston, Kansas, Baylor, Miami against FCS squad. Arkansas, Florida, tough game there. You'd expect Florida to come away with a home victory there. So that's what we'll see in week 2. And, of course, your Pitt Panthers will do a quick wrap-up. It's not going to be a great prediction here, but Pitt, I would think they should have no trouble with Rice. They're breaking in a new quarterback, but Rice really struggled last season, so I'd anticipate something along the lines of a 35-17 victory for the Panthers. Now, like I said, both quarterbacks will get playing time. Let me know in the comments who you think, should be the starting quarterback, Ben DiNucci or Thomas McVitie. So let me know what you think there as far as what the Panthers should do. And we'll just quick cursory look at the Pitt schedule again after Rice at Penn State, Oklahoma State at home, Miami University of Ohio coming to Pitt, at Clemson, Boston College at home, at Virginia Tech, Virginia at home, at Georgia Tech, Duke at home, at UNC, Miami at home for the Panthers. So that's the way things are looking this year. So some big games to look forward to. Let me know what you think as far as how they ranked us this season, how you think we're going to do it against Rice. Maybe what should the schematic be? Should we, just keep it calm, see what the quarterbacks can do, or should we break out the full playbook in lieu of playing against Penn State? So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch up with you. The next episode will be Pitt taking on Rice at Heinz Field to get this season underway. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Take care. We'll see you soon. Hail to Pitt. Bye-bye.